I'm Billy S. Today I'm ranking my top 10 worst bosses in all of Soulsborne, because for every Millennia, there's a Mikolash. I've talked about boss rankings throughout the years, but this is the first time I'm definitively revealing my most hated bosses when ranked together. Now, I'm not specifically looking at bosses that are mechanically bad, otherwise we'd just have a list of Dark Souls 2 bosses on our hands. More so, I'm looking at bosses that, for one reason or another, actually irritated me and caused visceral annoyance. So bosses like Prowling Mages and Congregation are bad, like really bad, but they're not bottom 10 worthy for me. And no, Bed of Chaos is not on this list. I have a very weird love-hate relationship with that fight, to the point where I just can't put it in my personal top 10 worst, even if maybe it should be. Also for Elden Ring, I'm focusing on main boss fights, as I already did a video on the worst Elden Ring bosses, including the field fights. So please be sure to parry that subscribe button to help me through my trauma, and let's jump right in. My top 10 worst bosses in Soulsborne, ranked. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. At number 10, we have the folding screen monkeys from Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. With all due respect to FromSoftware, they truly have such a mixed bag when it comes to their puzzle fights in their games, and I feel like it all came to a head with the folding screen monkeys. Before anyone asks, the Guardian Ape rematch is not on this list, but if this were a top 15, you would see it in this video alongside the greats like Mikolash, the Shulver Gank Squad, the Dark Souls Centipede Demon, and Half-Light Spear of the Church. Oh, how we're missing out. What makes me dislike the folding screen monkeys is how this battle doesn't play to Sekiro's strengths. The game's combat takes a back seat and you're forced to solve these riddles to get the monkeys in the perfect position so you can deathblow them, all while a secret monkey follows you from behind, stalking you until you happen to get lucky enough to kill him. And look, if the puzzles actually worked, I'd be more for this fight, but you can just brute force your way through the monkeys by running around like a headless chicken, and that's not exactly rewarding. My partner, who played Sekiro for the first time recently, was absolutely enraged by this fight, because he felt it was completely nonsensical with what it was asking of the player, especially after a fairly intense combat-oriented area like Senpo Temple. It opened my eyes to just how frustrating these monkeys can be for a new player, and at that moment I realized I couldn't leave them off this list. At least the Guardian Ape refight can be cheesed with firecrackers. There's no cheesing the folding screen monkeys. At number 9, we have the Capra Demon from Dark Souls. Now, YouTuber Illusory Wall and I follow each other on Blue Sky, and he did make a video talking about the defense of the Capra Demon and the arena. And you'll have to forgive me, man, when I say I just can't get behind your defense. It's all well and good to claim that Capra Demon promotes a problem-solving mindset, and the various ways you can glitch kill this boss through the fog gate can be seen as ways to solve the puzzle. But look, I'm a filthy little casual, and on my first playthrough when I didn't look up any information about the game, I found myself at one heck of an impasse. The run back to Capra Demon is long, and getting killed seconds upon entering the boss door due to the fog gate animation blocking one of the dogs about to jump me is something I just can't ignore. It's a shame because the Capra Demon itself, while its moveset is simplistic, can actually be a lot of fun to fight. There's a reason why the Omen Killers in Elden Ring exist. They knew this moveset was fire and decided to give it to a creature that can actually spit fire. The problem with Capra has always been the two dogs that live in the arena with him, as well as the arena itself, which is so cramped you'll be lucky to find a space to breathe. The irony, though, is that without these features, this would be one of the least memorable fights in the game, because the Capra Demon just doesn't do enough on its own. Basically, it's a bad fight, but I don't think changing it would actually be for the better here in the long run. Maybe if the dogs started further back in the arena, giving you a little more time to react before they come launching at you, it could work better. I just don't like being immediately ambushed. Give me a few seconds to gather my bearings and maybe, just maybe, I'd consider the Capra Demon fight to be not good, but neutral? At number 8, we have the Demon Fire Sage from Dark Souls, which isn't an inherently bad boss from a mechanical standpoint. The moveset is somewhat tricky with the various AoEs, and the arena has a lot of routes that can trip you up if you get a wonky hitbox while dodging. But it is my least favorite boss in Dark Souls purely because it doesn't need to exist. What are we doing here? We're fighting a reskin of a reskin! The Stray Demon was already a slightly harder recolor of the Asylum Demon, but now he's on fire and his moveset is the same? On top of that, he's not even the main boss of the Demon Ruins, because not 1 minute later, you enter the Fog Gate for the Centipede Demon. Which begs the question, why is he here? No, seriously, why? All he guards is a single shortcut to the Daughters of Chaos bonfire, which, in any other well-designed level, you wouldn't need to kill a full boss to reach that shortcut in the first place. He is a glorified mini-boss encounter, and that's exactly how he should have been presented, with no boss health bar, instead treated like the Hydra in Darkroot Basin and Ash Lake. At least then I'd have the option to skip the Fire Sage and move on with my life. This does open up a fun point though, that my perception of a boss encounter, or of an enemy in general, can be completely different based on that enemy's presentation in-game. Fire Sage irritates me because it's a boss fight, but if it were just a regular old dude, I'd be like, cool, the Demon Ruins still sucks, but it makes sense he's here because this is where all the reused enemies are. At least you can skip the Fire Sage and the Centipede Demon for the low price of 30 humanity. At number 7, we have the Dragon God from Demon Souls. It shouldn't come as a surprise that of the boss rosters in Soulsborne, Demon Souls is one of the weakest, and ooh, that's a fun idea for a future ranking. But I only have 2 fights from that game on today's list, and the first is a Metal Gear Solid stealth mission. That's right, you heard correctly, we're hiding behind pillars and not using any of our shiny equipment, because the only way to kill the Dragon God is with a pair of dinky little ballistas. You have to bait the boss into punching the rubble ahead of you, allowing you to sneak around and make it to the first ballista. Then you have to repeat the process across a larger expanse until you finally bring the boss to his proverbial knees and shatter the weak spot on his face. The problem here is that 1, the Dragon God sometimes doesn't care if you're stealthed and will punch you regardless. 2, the challenge isn't well communicated to the player, leading to a lot of trial and error and frustration. And 3, it's very discouraging when this is the final archdemon of this archstone and you don't get to use your actual weapons or equipment for a majority of the fight. Demon Souls just had to make a ton of puzzle bosses, or bosses with health pools that are so squishy a stray boot could squash them. But the Dragon God hurts extra bad because if you're lucky enough to beat the Vanguard in the tutorial, you actually get punched by a Dragon God in a cutscene after collecting some optional gear. So you're raring for that rematch and then you're met with this. And after the extremely tough Flame Lurker boss fight, you can't blame me for having high expectations. A Dragon God is lucky that there's one other boss in Demon Souls I have a way more personal gripe with. At number 6, we have the Adjudicator from Demon Souls. This is perhaps the most petty I have ever been towards a boss fight in this series, but for some reason I don't even think I can fully explain. I have a visceral hatred for Mr. Blobby over here. He comes at the end of one of the toughest levels in the game, with no shortcuts here to make your life easier, and he's easy as fuck. You drop down to the bottom level, hit the boss, realize his skin is so tough that you can't damage him, and then you hit his gaping wound to stun him. Falls over, hit the bird on the head, bish bash bosh, he's dead before you've even considered your own actions. So why do I vehemently despise this boss? Well, firstly, I don't think he remotely fits in with the theming of the Shrine of Storms. Lore aside, we've been fighting skeletons and flying manta rays, how does Big Chungy fit in with that? Secondly, his gimmick has already been used earlier in the game, but done far better against the Tower Knight. The Tower Knight has a lot of attacks that can still hit you when you're trying to break his kneecaps. The Adjudicator literally can't hit you even if he tries. The only cool attack he has is his tongue that can whip the upper levels, which is an attempt to stop players from sniping his weak spot with arrows from above. But in the remake, that's now an achievement, so of course people are gonna go for that, which makes discovering the alternate route to beat him far less enjoyable, as you won't realize it naturally. You're figuring it out because Bluepoint is telling you it's possible. At least the music is pretty fun, with a nice, subtle ambiance in the original, which is then butchered in the remake by being made into an overly bombastic track that doesn't work for what this fight is trying to be. All I'm saying is that the Adjudicator is an exceptionally basic boss with a mechanic that I could barely consider a puzzle, while stuck in a cramped arena that barely gives you room to move on the lower floors, and I just don't like it. Especially with the Shrine of Storms later giving us bangers like the Old Hero and the Storm King. Man sticks out like a sore thumb. He is the sore thumb. At number 5, we have the Godskin duo from Elden Ring. You didn't think I'd make a video on the worst bosses in Soulsborne and not have one of my least favourite gank fights on this list, would you? In fact, if you've seen my worst gank fights in the Souls series video from last year, the next few entries will look very familiar. The Godskin duo suffers from a similar issue as the Demon Fire Sage, in the sense that they're a mid-level boss fight that doesn't really need to be there. Had Crumbling Pharaoh Mazula only had the Placiduous Axe and Malekith boss fights at the end, nobody would bat an eye, but they had to shoehorn in such an awkwardly implemented gank. Instead of giving us 2 health bars with each boss tied to 1 apiece, they instead tie both Godskins to a single bar, and like the living failures from Bloodborne, if you kill a Godskin, they'll respawn a short while later. So rather than having the health bar just be the health of the bosses as they first appear, it's just 2 enemies respawning while you deplete their Kickstarter-backed health pool to the curb. Who thought this was a good idea? Then you consider that neither boss actually has a moveset that synergizes with the other, and suddenly you're in the throes of doing whatever the fuck you can to win while trying to find some semblance of good game design. It's heartbreaking for me, as someone who enjoys both of these bosses individually. Hell, the Apostle is one of my favorite fights in Elden Ring. But it's like mixing oil and water, you're about to burn your house down. At least you can overlevel for this fight to just tank your way through, but I genuinely fear for players who do this on low-level challenge runs. Sleep pots might be your only way to survive, methinks. At number 4, we have Lud and Zalin from Dark Souls 2, the king's pets who reside on the far reaches of the frigid outskirts. It's their job to finish off any exiled prisoners who make it through Reindeer Fuckland, and they certainly do their job with aplomb. The funny part is that as an actual fight, Lud and Zalin are fine. It starts off against one of the cats, then when they get low on health, the other joins in, and once the first one dies, the other gets a buff to their damage and can regen their HP sometimes. It's a little annoying, sure, but I've experienced tougher gimmicks in the series. But it is impossible to enjoy this fight when every run back takes minutes off your life. The Frigid Outskirts is the worst area in the series, an expanse of nothingness filled with reindeers and the tears of players who died to said reindeers. You can't move 5 feet without getting attacked, to the point where reaching the boss fog is a boss battle in itself. Lud and Zalin are tied to their runbacks. You can't rank their fight without taking into account the pain of getting there. And on top of that, they're a reskin of a boss that was introduced in this very area, Ava the King's Pet, which is a significantly better fight than these 2 weasels. When this DLC first came out, people actually paid money for this. At least with Scholar, it's all on disc, but people actually paid money to experience the Frigid Outskirts and Lud and Zalin, which I find fucking insane to think about. For crimes against my wallet, take your 4th worst boss in the series medal and get out. But also, let me kill you because I really want that Lois Greatsword and Shield from your souls. How dare they put a cool weapon behind this fight, what the heck? At number 3, we have the Valiant Gargoyles from Elden Ring, the worst gank fight in the series. I've talked about this on multiple videos, so I'm going to break down my issues very quickly. A good gank fight is one where the opponents you face work in tandem to fight the player. Their movesets should complement each other so that at no point does the player feel like they're caught in an unfair scenario. Their levels of aggressiveness should be balanced so that the player can have breathers between attack strings to regain their bearings, and if there are any extra gimmicks, they should be well conveyed. 1. The Valiant Gargoyles do not work in any form of tandem to fight the player. It really does feel like two enemies completely independent of each other trying to fight you. 2, their movesets do not complement each other in the slightest. There was an opportunity here to make moves where the Gargoyles could work together to perform them, but that would have been too much work, clearly. 3, they're both aggressive, so getting a chance to heal and breathe is just not going to happen under normal circumstances. And 4, the poison. The fucking poison. The Demon Prince gank from Dark Souls 3 did this perfectly. Purple poison trails that distinguished themselves from the arena, so you knew exactly what they were and how to avoid them. The Valiant Gargoyles spit faded green poison that you can barely see, and if it touches you, you get stagger-locked trying to roll out of it. Why not just make it so the poison doesn't stagger you but builds up your poison meter, which would allow people the chance to see, oh no, I'm getting poisoned, let me move away. Instead, you just get surprise poisoned from behind because you can't see the gargoyle shooting it, leading to an imminent death and despair. Like, I wanted to like these gargoyles because I love the trope in these games, but mechanically they're just not well designed and they've been done far better in the past. I would rather do the Frenzied Flame platforming segment to reach the Deep Root depths than take on this pair, and that's saying a lot. At number 2, we have the Ancient Wyvern from Dark Souls 3. You didn't think I'd forget about my favourite set piece that pretends to be a boss, did you? The Ancient Wyvern has the audacity to have a boss health bar, despite the fact that there really isn't any fight to be had here. You have to run through a large portion of the Archdragon Peak level, avoiding the host of enemies attempting to run you down, so you can reach a platform above the Wyvern's head, allowing you to one-shot it with a plunging attack. A plunging attack that you can actually miss if you're not careful for, by the way. Now, look, I don't mind this concept as a level hazard. In fact, like the Demon Fire Sage entry from earlier, take away the health bar from the Wyvern and have it be a regular enemy, and this ends up feeling like an interesting setup. But trying to tell us that the Ancient Wyvern is a boss, getting us hyped to fight an actual dragon, only for us to one-shot it after some platforming and navigation challenges is just, it doesn't really work. The most dangerous part of the fight isn't even the boss itself, it's the chain-wielding snake man just before the ladder leading to the safety of the wooden rafters. That man can snipe like a Widowmaker, and you have to remember the chain does damage when he pulls the weapon back in. And of course, if you die at any point, you have to do the entire run through the arena all over again, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but given some of the enemies here are fairly tanky, it can start to grate on you. The worst part though is that when you beat the boss, it actively warps you away from the arena, so if you want to actually explore it and collect any treasures you might have missed, you have to do a little bit of backtracking. It's a very small quality of life moment where I'm like, what was the point in teleporting me 5 feet upwards? They could have just shown a cutscene of the path leading to the next part of the peak opening up. I didn't consent to being abducted, especially when the arena actually has some valuable loot to find, like the Ring of Steel protection. But hey, at least it's not my least favorite boss in the series. That goes to... At number 1, we have the Ancient Dragon from Dark Souls 2. I'm still trying to understand how we went from the absolute glory that was the Black Dragon Calamite fight in Dark Souls to whatever the fuck this is supposed to be. A hidden fight that you can start by attacking the Ancient Dragon, this boss has one of the most repetitively bland movesets I've ever seen on a dragon in this series. He flies up, he spews fire down beneath him, he lands, he shoots fire outwards, he stomps, he flies up, rinse and repeat. There is no variance to this fight. It is all the same tedious attacks, while his tanky health bar ensures you're going to be here for a while doing the same song and dance. I think what's impressive here, impressively bad, mind you, is that FromSoft somehow managed to make a giant, powerful dragon feel sluggish and lazy. But then you get clipped by his fire and suddenly your entire health bar is gone. That's right, the Ancient Dragon has some insane damage output, which means if you make a mistake at any point, you're almost always royally fucked. And if the dragon decides to fly up at an awkward spot in the arena before doing his fire breath attack, you might actually end up with nowhere to run to escape the flames, leading to a potential death you might not be able to avoid. Now, in Scholar of the First Sin, this results in you running back to the boss and trying again, no problems whatsoever. But my dear viewer, if you do this on the original release of Dark Souls 2, every single enemy in the Dragon Shrine will now be aggroed onto you, including every single Dragon Knight on that last staircase leading up to the boss arena, which makes this one of the worst boss runbacks in the entire series. Albeit one they fixed in a future game version, thank god. I think part of why Ancient Dragon is my least favourite fight in the series is simply because with every other on this list, I can imagine myself doing it again, either because it's compulsory or because I'm a little bit of a masochist. I can't ever see myself refighting the Ancient Dragon and wasting all that time unless it's for a challenge run. People bitch about the Elden Ring dragons and how they like to fly around a lot, but holy fuck, I wish the Ancient Dragon would move those arthritis-ridden bones of his. You new fans don't understand how good you get it with modern FromSoft dragons, when I, someone who got into this series through Dark Souls 2, had the Guardian Wyvern and the Ancient Dragon as my introductions. I don't want to see another complaint about chasing after Caligo in Night Rain when the Ancient Dragon exists. And that's my list. Those are my personal 10 least favourite fights in Soulsborne. What are your 10 least favourites? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos, and tell me why the Bed of Chaos should have been on this list. My social medias are on screen now. You can follow me over on Blue Sky, on Twitch, or in my Discord. And I want to give a shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. $4.99, you get shout outs, you get access to my Dark Souls 3 Soul Level 1 Let's Play, and there will be more challenge runs coming at some point in the future. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Adios.